Imagine that you are in the Arctic, where the temperature is minus 40 degrees. Your fingers begin to go numb, and your breath freezes almost instantly.
You see another ice droplet on his upper lip.
Yet the only thing that can save you is snow itself. It sounds like a paradox, because snow is, by nature, extremely cold. So cold that simply touching it can make our skin ache with freezing pain. And yet, for thousands of years, humans and even animals have managed to turn those very blocks of snow into warm rooms in the middle of raging snowstorms. So how is it possible that an igloo, something made from the very material that normally makes you shiver, can actually keep you warm? To find out who truly invented the very first igloo, some archaeologists believe the answer lies with the ancestors of the Inuit and Eskimo people about 5,000 years ago. In an extremely harsh environment where winter seemed almost endless, temperatures could drop negative 50 degrees. The wind cut through the skin, and when you looked around, there was almost not a single tree to build a shelter. And strangely enough, from what seemed like the coldest and most useless material of all, snow, they created one of the most intelligent shelters in human history, the igloo.
Then a voice bade him welcome to the igloo. "Eat all you need of seal meat," said the voice. "Dry your mittens and boots on the rack above the lamp."
And there is another hypothesis that is even more fascinating. Some people believe that humans were not actually the inventors at all, but merely apprentices. Because millions of years earlier, polar bears had already learned to dig dens in the snow to survive the winter. Those snow dens trapped the heat from their bodies and created a surprisingly warm space in the middle of the frozen wilderness. And whether the first architect was a human being or a polar bear, the igloo still remains a paradox that leaves many people puzzled. To understand this, we must first change a very common misunderstanding about cold. When the weather turns freezing, we often huddle up because we think that a stream of cold air is entering our bodies. But in physics, the story is completely different. In fact, many scientists even joke that, in reality, there is no such thing as cold. Imagine that your body is like a cup of hot water sitting in the middle of winter. Heat always escapes into the colder environment, and the faster that heat escapes, the colder you feel. That is exactly why the igloo exists to take on a crucial role, keeping your warmth from escaping outside. It acts like a giant heat-trapping cage, a place where the warmth from your body, from your breath, and even from a small lamp can all be retained inside. So this leads to an even more interesting question. How does the human body exchange heat with its surrounding environment? In physics, this happens in 3 different ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. And the remarkable thing about an igloo is that it slows down all 3 of these pathways through which heat escapes. Let's begin with the first mechanism, conduction. When you touch a block of cold metal, you feel the cold running into your hand. But what is actually happening is that heat from your hand is transferring into the metal. That process is called conduction. At first glance, snow may look like a solid block of ice. But if you examine it under a microscope, you will notice something quite surprising. Snow contains about 95% air trapped between countless tiny ice crystals. And in physics, air happens to be one of the poorest conductors of heat, with a thermal conductivity of only about 0.024 W mK. If you have ever worn a thick down jacket, you will immediately understand this principle. Inside a down jacket are layers of fluffy fibers or feathers. What keeps you warm is not the fibers themselves, but the tiny pockets of air trapped between them. These pockets slow down the escape of heat, and if you compress the jacket until it becomes completely flat, it will almost lose its ability to keep you warm. An igloo works according to the very same principle. But the interesting thing is that if you try to use freshly fallen snow to build an igloo, the structure will collapse almost immediately because the snow is too loose and weak. And if you think that using solid ice would make it stronger, that would be a dangerous mistake. Ice conducts heat quickly, meaning it would transfer the cold from outside into the shelter so fast that you could freeze within just a few hours. The Inuit understood this very well. They only searched for compacted snow on the ground, the kind that had been pressed tightly by wind and time over many months. This layer of snow is firm enough to be cut into blocks, almost like bricks. That is precisely the perfect material for building a home in the middle of a frozen wilderness. But the secret of an igloo does not lie only in the material. It also lies in how the air inside the shelter is controlled. This brings us to the second mechanism, convection. If you have ever seen an igloo, you might notice a rather unusual detail. Instead of placing the entrance directly in the wall, there is a low tunnel leading inside. This is not accidental. In nature, cold air is heavier and sinks downward, while warm air is lighter and rises upward. When freezing wind flows inside, it drops to the lowest part of the entrance tunnel and remains trapped there, while the sleeping area is raised about 20 to 40 inches above the floor. Because of this, you always lie within the warmest layer of air floating above. The Inuit built their shelters with remarkable skill, stacking the snow blocks in a spiral pattern, each block leaning slightly inward until they all meet at the top. The result is a perfect dome that can stand firmly on its own, without any supporting pillars. This dome shape not only allows the shelter to withstand powerful snowstorms, but also helps warm air circulate evenly throughout the interior, instead of becoming trapped in one corner. But the most interesting part lies in the final mechanism, thermal radiation. The main source of heat that warms an igloo is you. The body of every adult continuously releases about 80 to 100 watts of heat. This number may sound small, but in an enclosed space surrounded by thick insulating snow, that heat gradually accumulates. Imagine that you are inside a thick blanket. Your body does not produce a huge amount of heat, but the blanket traps that warmth, making the space inside warmer and warmer. An igloo works in almost the same way. If there is also a small oil lamp or a heating stove inside, the temperature within the igloo can rise to about 15-20 degrees, while outside it may be as cold as -50 degrees. And there is also a small but extremely fascinating detail. As the air inside the igloo warms up, the layer of snow on the inner surface begins to melt slightly. But the moment that thin layer of water meets the colder air near the outer side, it immediately freezes again, forming a thin sheet of ice covering the inside of the dome. This layer of ice acts like a natural suit of armor, making the igloo stronger and helping it retain heat more effectively. So by understanding how snow traps air, how the dome structure controls the flow of air, and how the human body releases heat, the Inuit were able to turn fragile snowflakes into one of the most ingenious survival structures in human history. If you find these insights interesting and they make you feel just a little more warm inside, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other strange secrets of the world around us. And if there is any everyday phenomenon that you have always been curious to understand, leave a comment below.